The music was loud, laughter filled the air, and Zara and Cube stood in the middle of it all, smiling on the outside but frozen inside. The wedding ceremony was beautiful, flowers everywhere, guests cheering as Tandy, her younger sister, glowed in her white dress. Then her father took the microphone and called Zara to the stage. "Zara," he said proudly, "your sister needs a good start in her new life. And as her family, we've decided to give her a home." He held up a shiny set of keys. Zara blinked, confused for a second, until she recognized them. Her house keys. The house she had built with her own hands, from 10 years of grinding work, skipped meals, and sleepless nights. The crowd clapped and cheered as her father placed the keys into Tandy's hand. Tandy squealed with joy, hugging their parents while photographers snapped pictures. Zara just stood there, her smile trembling. In that moment, the noise faded. She could only hear her heartbeat pounding in her ears. Every brick of that house flashed in her mind. The nights she walked home exhausted after double shifts, the weekends she spent painting walls instead of resting, the dreams she poured into that home. And now, they'd handed it away like it meant nothing. Like she meant nothing. Her mother beamed, her father looked proud, and Tandy waved the keys in the air, laughing. No one noticed the tears forming in Zara's eyes as she clapped along with the crowd, pretending her world hadn't just shattered in front of everyone. The guests were gone. The music had stopped. Empty bottles and half-eaten plates covered the tables, but the house was full of noise again, her family laughing, celebrating, acting like nothing had just happened. Zara stood by the doorway, still in her wedding guest dress, her hands shaking slightly. The lights from the chandelier she'd chosen herself cast a soft glow across the living room. The same room she'd designed, the same walls she'd painted. Now, it didn't feel like home anymore. She finally spoke, her voice quiet but firm. "How could you give my house to Tandy without even asking me?" Her mother didn't even look guilty. She just sighed and said, "Zara, you're single. You'll manage. Your sister needs stability." Zara blinked, trying to process that. "So because I'm not married, my work doesn't matter?" Her father's tone was colder. "Family comes first. You've always had enough. It's time you learned to share." Share. The word burned in her chest. She wasn't being asked to share. They'd taken everything. Tandy walked in just then, barefoot, holding a glass of champagne. "Oh, come on, Zara," she said with a smirk. "It's not that deep. You can always buy another house. You're good at that stuff." She laughed, and her parents chuckled along, as if it were all a joke. Zara's eyes scanned the room, the curtains she had sewn, the couch she had saved for months to buy, the art she hung with her own hands. Every corner screamed of her effort, her love. And now, it was all being claimed by people who didn't even see her pain. Something inside her snapped, quietly, not with anger but with clarity. She didn't yell. She didn't argue. She just stood still, watching them sit around her table, drinking wine in her chairs, talking about their future in her home. Later that night, when the laughter had faded and the lights went out, Zara walked to her bedroom, the one she'd designed as her safe place. She opened her closet and started packing. One shirt, then another. A few books. Her laptop. The photo of her and her grandmother, the only person who ever truly believed in her. Tears threatened to fall, but she held them back. Crying wouldn't fix anything. When she was done, she stood by the front door one last time. The house felt heavier now, full of memories that no longer belonged to her. She looked up the stairs where her sister slept peacefully, then whispered to herself, "Never again." Then she stepped out into the cold night, suitcase in hand, leaving behind the house she built, and the family who broke her heart. The room was small, barely big enough for a bed, a table, and Zara's boxes. It sat behind a noisy mechanic shop where the smell of oil and metal filled the air. Every morning, engines roared to life before sunrise, and every night, she lay awake listening to the sound of tools clanging. It wasn't much, but it was hers. She didn't have time to feel sorry for herself. Every cent she'd saved had gone into that tiny space, her laptop, and a few sketchbooks. One evening, her best friend Lebo showed up with takeout and a stubborn kind of hope. "You're too talented to stay stuck," she said, handing Zara a drink. "Turn that pain into something beautiful. Start your own thing. You don't need anyone's permission." Zara laughed weakly. "Start what, Lebo? I don't even have a proper chair." "Then build one," Lebo said, smiling. "You're good at creating something out of nothing. Do it again, for yourself this time." Those words stuck. That night, Zara opened her laptop and began sketching designs. Tiny cafes, old apartments, forgotten corners of the city that could be transformed into something fresh and alive. Days turned into weeks of work. She reached out to small business owners, offered to redesign their spaces for almost nothing, just to build a portfolio. At first, nobody trusted her. She was just a young woman working out of a back room. But one cafe owner took a chance on her, and when Zara finished, people couldn't believe the transformation. The dull, broken shop became a warm, modern space that drew in customers. Photos of her work started circulating online. People started calling her the woman who makes ruins shine. From there, everything began to shift. She named her business ZC Interiors, short, simple, and powerful. She worked late nights, running on instant coffee and willpower, sketching until her eyes hurt. Lebo helped her with social media, posting before and after photos that went viral across Makuru City. Soon, clients were lining up. Restaurants, offices, even a small hotel wanted her touch. Every project told a piece of her story, broken things becoming whole again. The irony wasn't lost on her. Meanwhile, her parents stayed silent. No calls, no messages. They didn't ask where she lived or how she was surviving. But Zara didn't care anymore. She had no time for resentment. She had work to do, a life to rebuild, and a future to claim. One night, as she stood in her tiny room surrounded by blueprints and paint samples, she looked around and smiled for the first time in months. The sound of the mechanic's tools outside didn't bother her anymore. It reminded her of progress, of noise that meant movement. She whispered to herself, "This time, I'm building something they can't take away." Months passed, and Zara's life had completely changed. She was busier than ever, designing spaces all over Makuru City. Every project she touched turned heads. But one afternoon, while scrolling through her phone during a lunch break, she froze. Her sister Tandy's name was trending online. Tandy and her husband Kelechi were hosting a grand housewarming party in Zara's old house. Photos filled social media. Bright balloons, gold decorations, a red carpet leading to the front door. Influencers, relatives, and local celebrities posed in front of the house like it was a landmark. Someone even captioned a photo, "The perfect home for the perfect couple." Zara stared at the pictures, her chest tight. The walls had been repainted, her favorite art replaced, and her handmade furniture was gone. Every trace of her had been wiped away. It was like she'd never existed there at all. She scrolled in silence, reading the comments full of praise. People called it a dream home. But Zara noticed the cracks others didn't. The way the ceiling beams looked oddly low, the new extensions that weren't part of her design. She knew the structure inside and out, and what she saw made her uneasy. As the evening went on, videos from the party flooded her feed. The music was loud, guests were dancing, and Tandy glowed in her sparkling dress, raising a glass in her new living room. Zara set her phone aside and went back to her sketches, trying not to care. But something deep inside whispered that this story wasn't over. Then, just before midnight, her phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Messages poured in, Lebo co-workers, even clients sending her links. Zara opened one and gasped. The videos showed chaos, screams, guests running as chunks of plaster fell from the ceiling. The roof of the living room, the one she'd warned her father not to touch years ago, had collapsed during the party. Tables were overturned, drinks spilled, people covered in dust and panic. Within hours, headlines appeared everywhere. Bride's new mansion crashes on wedding day. Makuru couple's lavish party ends in disaster. Zara sat quietly, watching it unfold online. She didn't feel joy or pity, just a strange calm. Later that night, another video surfaced. Tandy crying in the yard, her perfect dress covered in dust, Kelechi shouting at contractors, and their parents arguing in front of everyone. It was all there for the world to see. Her phone kept lighting up with messages asking if she'd seen it. Zara just typed a short reply to Lebo, "What's built on betrayal never stands." Then she closed her laptop, took a deep breath, and smiled faintly. For the first time, she didn't feel broken. She felt free. The weeks after the house collapse were chaos for Zara's family. The story had gone viral across Makuru City. Contractors refused to take the job, and the house stood half-ruined, a shell of what used to be her dream. Tandy and Kelechi moved in with her parents, arguing about who should pay for the repairs. Her father's pride took a hard hit, and her mother avoided showing her face in public. Everyone was whispering about the cursed house. While they scrambled to find money, Zara's life was going in the opposite direction. Her designs were now being featured in magazines. People loved her story, the young woman who turned broken spaces into art. One morning, she opened her email to find an offer from a global architecture firm. They wanted her to lead a luxury villa project on the coast. It was her biggest opportunity yet. She called Lebo immediately. "They want me, Lebo." "Me?" Lebo screamed on the other end of the phone. "You see, I told you. You're not just surviving anymore, you're winning." Zara laughed, tears in her eyes. For the first time, success didn't feel like revenge. It just felt right. Soon, her designs were appearing on billboards. Magazines called her the face of modern African design. Clients booked her months in advance. And that's when the phone calls from home began. At first, it was her mother, gentle check-ins asking how she was doing. Then came her father, his voice softer than she'd ever heard it. "Zara," he said one morning, "you've really made us proud. The city is talking about you." She smiled but didn't say much. She knew where this was heading. A week later, he called again. "Your sister's house needs serious work. We thought maybe you could help. Just guide the renovation, family helping family." Zara was quiet for a moment, staring at the blueprints spread across her office desk. Her company logo, ZC Interiors, gleamed on the wall behind her. She thought about all the nights she cried alone, all the times she begged for their approval and got silence instead. Then she smiled softly. "Papa," she said, her tone calm and polite, "I no longer work for free." There was a long pause on the line. Her father cleared his throat. Of course. We understand." When the call ended, Zara leaned back in her chair and looked out the window at the city skyline. The same people who once dismissed her were now seeking her help. The balance had shifted completely. She wasn't the invisible daughter anymore. She was the woman people couldn't stop talking about, the one who built an empire from heartbreak. And as the evening sun poured through her office window, Zara smiled to herself. Some victories don't need noise. They just need peace. It was a quiet evening when the call came. Zara had just finished reviewing a design proposal and was making tea when her phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. She almost ignored it, but something told her to answer. "Ms. Nkube," the voice said. "This is Mr. Dubé, your late grandmother's lawyer. I've been trying to reach you for a while. There's something you need to know about the house in Makuru City." Zara froze. "The house?" she repeated softly. "What about it?" There was a pause, then the man said, "According to your grandmother's will, that property was legally transferred to you before her passing. It was never meant to belong to your parents." Zara's hand trembled slightly. "That can't be right. My parents said it was theirs." Mr. Dubé sighed. "That's the problem. After your grandmother passed, someone altered the registration documents. When I reviewed the original files, I found a signature that looks like yours, but it isn't. It's a forgery." The word forgery echoed in her ears. She sat down slowly, her mind spinning. "You mean my mother changed the papers?" "I'm afraid so," he said gently. "Your grandmother trusted you. She wanted you to have that home. She told me herself that you earned it. But after her death, the property was illegally transferred under your parents' name. I'm sending you the documents tonight." When the call ended, Zara just sat there, the room completely still. Her tea had gone cold. She opened her laptop, and within minutes, the lawyer's email arrived, scanned copies of the will, the property deed, and her so-called signature. She zoomed in, staring at the shaky handwriting that tried to mimic her. It was close enough to fool anyone, but not her. She'd recognize her mother's handwriting anywhere. A wave of disbelief washed over her. Her chest tightened, and her throat burned. For years, she'd blamed herself for not being good enough, for not being the daughter her parents could love openly. She thought they gave her house away because they didn't value her. But now she understood. This wasn't a mistake. It was betrayal. Planned. Deliberate. She leaned back in her chair, tears spilling quietly down her cheeks. Not the kind that came from heartbreak, but the kind that came from clarity. Her grandmother had believed in her. She'd protected her even after death. And her parents, the ones she'd worked so hard to please, had stolen from her. Zara whispered into the empty room, her voice shaking but steady. So this was never about love. She closed her laptop and sat in silence, the truth heavy but freeing. For the first time, she saw everything clearly, not as a daughter trying to be accepted, but as a woman who finally understood her worth. The next morning, Zara woke up with a new kind of strength. Not the angry, broken kind, but the quiet kind that comes when you finally know the truth. She dressed carefully, her movements calm and steady. She put the legal documents from the lawyer into a neat folder and slipped it into her bag. Today wasn't about revenge. It was about justice. When she arrived at her parents' house, the same one she used to call home, everything felt smaller. Her mother opened the door, surprised. "Zara, you didn't call." "I didn't need to," Zara said softly, stepping inside. Her father was in the living room, reading the newspaper. He looked up, his smile fading when he saw the folder in her hand. Zara stood in front of them, her voice calm but cutting through the silence. "You forged my name." Her mother blinked, pretending not to understand. "What are you talking about?" Zara placed the papers on the table, the official stamps visible. "Grandma left the house to me. I have the will, the original documents, and proof that someone changed them after she passed." The lawyer confirmed it. "The signature isn't mine." Her father's face went pale. The newspaper slipped from his hand. Her mother's mouth opened, but no words came out. Tandy walked in from the kitchen, holding a cup of tea. When she saw the documents, she froze. "You knew," Zara said, her eyes meeting her sister's. "You all did." Tandy started to cry, the kind of messy, desperate cry that fills the room. "I didn't know Mama forged it, I swear. I just thought it was theirs." Zara didn't raise her voice. She didn't even look angry. "You lived in a house that wasn't yours and never asked a single question," she said quietly. "That makes you part of it." Her father stood up, trying to regain control. "Zara, you don't have to do this. We're family. We can fix this privately." She looked at him, the man she once trusted most, and shook her head. "No, Papa. You broke something that can't be fixed with words." You'll answer for it in court. And she walked out, leaving behind their shocked faces and silence heavy with guilt. Weeks later, the courtroom was full. The evidence was clear. The forged signature, the altered papers, the original will, everything pointed to the truth. Zara didn't need to speak much. The documents spoke for her. When the judge finally read the verdict, Zara felt the world stop for a second. The property is to be restored to Ms. Zarenkyub's name, the judge said. And compensation is to be paid for the illegal transfer. The room erupted, murmurs, whispers, even a few gasps. Her parents sat frozen, her father's head in his hands, her mother crying quietly. Zara just closed her eyes, letting out a slow breath. She didn't smile or celebrate. She simply looked up, as if speaking to someone unseen, and whispered, "Thank you, Nan. You never stopped protecting me." For the first time, she walked out of that courtroom free, not just the owner of the house, but of her own story. Months later, the judgment had already been made official. The house was Zara's again. What used to be her parents' pride and Tandy's trophy now carried a new name on the title deed, Zarenkyub. She hadn't gone back right away. She wanted time to breathe, to let the truth settle. But when she finally drove there one afternoon, the sight stopped her heart for the once beautiful home looked worn down. Paint was peeling, the garden was dry, and broken tiles scattered near the porch. It didn't look like a home anymore. It looked tired, just like the people who had lived inside. Her mother opened the door when she knocked. Her eyes were swollen, her tone flat. "You didn't have to come," she muttered. "I did," Zara said softly, stepping inside. The living room was nearly empty. Boxes were stacked by the wall, half-packed. Her father sat silently on the couch, staring at the floor. Tandy wasn't there at first, but Zara heard her arguing on the phone in the next room. Something about unpaid bills and Kelechi refusing to help. It didn't surprise her. Word around the city was that Tandy's marriage was falling apart. After the house collapse, investors pulled out of Kelechi's business, and the couple had drowned in debt. Now they could barely afford rent, let alone repairs. Her father finally looked up. "We're leaving," he said quietly. "The court gave us 30 days, but we don't have anywhere to go yet." Zara took a deep breath. "I know," she said, "and I'm not here to throw you out. I'm giving you the full 30 days. Take your time to find another place." Her mother frowned, confusion flashing in her eyes. "After everything we did, you're still giving us time?" Zara met her gaze, calm, steady, and full of something her mother didn't expect. "You taught me how cruel family can be," she said gently, "but I'll teach you grace." The room went silent. Even Tandy, who had come out from the hallway mid-argument, stopped and stared. Her eyes filled with tears, but Zara didn't comfort her. This time, she didn't need to play the peacemaker or the good sister. She was simply standing in her power, kind but unshakable. "I'll have the lawyers handle the handover," Zara continued, her voice steady. "After you leave, the house will be renovated. I'll turn it into something new." Her father nodded slowly, shame written all over his face. "You've become stronger than all of us," he whispered. Zara picked up her bag and turned to leave. "I had to," she said quietly. "You gave me no choice." As she stepped outside, the evening light fell across the house that had once broken her. She took one last look at it, not with bitterness, but with peace. Sometimes the sweetest victory isn't revenge. It's walking away knowing you became better, not bitter. And in that moment, Zara understood something her family never did. Power isn't about control. It's about grace that humbles even the proud. When the house was finally empty, Zara walked through every room in silence. The air was thick with old memories, laughter that once hurt, voices that once made her feel small. But this time, she didn't feel pain. She felt power. The place that once broke her would now become something new. She stood in the center of the living room, sunlight pouring through cracked windows, and whispered to herself, "Let's start again." Within weeks, renovations began. Zara redesigned every inch, not to erase the past, but to rebuild it with purpose. Walls that once held arguments now displayed vibrant murals painted by local artists. The rooms were filled with warm light, open space, and hope. Where her parents once hosted parties, she built a creative studio filled with workstations, fabric samples, and design boards. When the project was done, a new sign hung proudly above the entrance, the Zarenkyub Design Studio. It became more than an office. It was a home for dreamers, especially women who, like Zara, had been overlooked or underestimated. She hired single mothers, young graduates, and women from local shelters. She trained them in interior design, business management, and craftsmanship. Every day, the studio buzzed with laughter, hard work, and stories of second chances. Lebo, her best friend, handled the business side of things while Zara led the creative team. Together, they turned the studio into one of the most sought-after design firms in Makuru City. Clients lined up not just for her talent, but for the story behind her work, a story of loss, faith, and rebirth. When the grand opening day arrived, The front lawn was filled with flowers, music, and people dressed in their best. Media outlets crowded outside, cameras flashing as Zara walked out in a white suit that symbolized her fresh start. The same house that once humiliated her family now stood as a monument to her strength. Reporters pushed forward, calling her name. One asked, "Zara, how does it feel to reclaim what was stolen from you?" Zara paused, her eyes soft but confident. She smiled and said, "It's not about revenge. It's about rebuilding what's mine, inside and out." The crowd applauded, and for a moment, Zara looked up at the sky, feeling her grandmother's presence. She could almost hear her gentle laugh, the one that used to comfort her as a little girl. Inside the studio, her team celebrated, raising glasses of juice and soda. Zara joined them, laughing freely, something she hadn't done in years. Every wall, every color, every beam of light carried her story. This was more than success. It was redemption. She had taken back not just her house, but her voice, her power, and her peace. And as the sun set behind the newly restored building, Zara smiled to herself. The house that once broke her had finally become the home she was always meant to build. The evening was quiet when Zara drove to the old cemetery on the hill. The air smelled like rain, and the sky was brushed with orange and pink. She walked slowly between the headstones until she reached the one she'd come to see, her grandmother's grave. The flowers she'd left weeks ago had dried, but they still stood tall, just like the woman who had raised her. She knelt down and brushed the dust off the stone, tracing her grandmother's name with gentle fingers. So much had changed since the last time she came here. The house, the business, the fame, all of it had grown from the pain that once broke her. But in this quiet place, she didn't feel powerful. She just felt grateful. Her voice was soft when she finally spoke. "They gave away my home, Nana," she whispered, her eyes glistening. "But they didn't know. I was the foundation." A cool breeze passed through the trees, almost like a response, and Zara smiled through her tears. It felt like her grandmother was there, listening, proud. She stood up slowly, looking out at the horizon. The sun was setting, painting the sky gold, the same color as the curtains that once hung in her old living room. For the first time, that memory didn't hurt. It just reminded her how far she'd come. Zara took one last look at the grave and whispered, "Thank you for never letting me fall." Then she turned and walked back to her car, her steps light, her heart full. She was no longer the girl who lost everything. She was the woman who rebuilt it all, stronger, wiser, and unshakable. The wind followed her as she drove away, carrying her grandmother's love and the quiet truth that some foundations can never be broken.